Mixed Race Women Collective. I'm so grateful to all of you tuning in today on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. First of all, blessed and Merry Christmas to all of you. And I am so excited here today, live from Santa Maria, California, with our Santa hats. I'm very, very honored, blessed, and grateful to have two of my favorite people in the entire world here with me today to honor my recent initiatives here with the Mixed Race Women Collective. Who better than my own brothers who've been there with me throughout the entire way, from just soon after I was born, basically when they were born, till present day, to talk a little bit and speak to the mixed race experience, but also look specifically at what a mixed race woman might have dealt with. And they know what to do because they're my brothers. So I'm excited to introduce them to you and have them ask me some questions. I've been interviewing a lot of women, mixed race women, on this experience. And now I'm really excited for them to interview me and connect with all of you. So take it away. Who was born first? This guy.
Well, of the brothers.
Well, after me, I'm Amitza, and I was born first. I'm the oldest of our three. These are the Mascati siblings, and I feel very loved right now, hence the shirt. And we got this guy.
I was born second. I don't know if I can read it on my hat. I am Omar. I am the middle child. What
Enough
else
said.
should I say?
I mean, enough said, really.
Enough said. That tells you everything you need to know.
And I'm Khalil. I'm the youngest, and looking forward to ask Amitza some hard-hitting questions.
Oh boy. We have a special shout out to our Titi Medium. Way to go. We love you. Hello. Okay. Well, why I wanted to do this today on Christmas Day, Christmas specials, because I figured today is the day that we spend with family. Sure. And I've been doing these pretty consistently on Fridays. So Friday vibes. We got California sunshine on a Friday afternoon. I wanted to know what you want to know, if anything, that's why you're here, about, or if you want to ask a question, or if there's something that you've noticed about us growing up that you want to throw out there, and you can share about your experience too, because I feel like if there's anybody that has had an experience similar to mine, it's you guys, right? Because we all grew up with the same mom and dad. So what do you think?
As you've been doing these interviews, what have you found is the thing that's most consistently brought up?
Oh,
is there some through line or something similar, like any pattern that you see between the people you've interviewed as mixed race women? Is there some
she feels this, she feels this, I feel this?
Oh, I feel there's
if something.
Yeah, I think there's one or two main things. I think one is experiencing the question, and tell me if you guys have experienced it too, of oh, what's your name? Oh, me too. Okay, and really soon after getting the what are you? Mm-hmm. Or oh yeah, where are you from? And Jersey. Yeah, okay, but where? But where though? And I think anyone with any considered ethnic background experiences that. But I think it's been fascinating to just talk to a bunch of mixed race women and have every lady that empathize with the question of oh yeah, and filling the other box, checking the other box in standardized tests.
Yeah, right.
And we're oh, well, now there's multiracial, multi-ethnic. Right. That's pretty cool.
2 or more races, but in the parentheses, not Hispanic.
Oh, wait. And then you're wait a second, so.
Are you Hispanic?
Oh, shoot. So I have to click Hispanic, and then.
So I have to click, prefer not to answer.
Okay, bye.
Unknown.
Right. So I just feel hey, Tio Panino. Tio Panino's also watching. Panino, my godfather, our uncle, my mom's oldest brother. So I think there's that, right? And then the other one I thought of is actually, given everything that we just said about, growing up, especially, I think we all understand that we grow up looking to form our identities. And I think a lot of women I've heard have also said oh, I have often looked to seek where I feel I belong, right? Because there's this, I think naturally a tendency, and I'm curious about what you all think, to when we're being raised, already born and raised in New Jersey in the United States, but then waking up and going to church. And so we have a church community, or going to Puerto Rico and speaking Spanish, or even being surrounded by like that Puerto Rican food and culture and learning the Spanish and knowing that our family relatives speak that language, and we see people around us like connect to that. And then also waking up and going to Jamaat Khana, to like a mosque, to a Muslim prayer setting, and then hearing Gujarati and Hindi and growing up in Little India and Edison, and like navigating that and being like, oh, okay, like there's this too, but then kind of knowing the language, but then sort of, and then not really. And it's like kind of access to different communities. So I've seen that we're not the only ones that experience that. I think even if you have like one ethnicity that is like the hyphenated American, right? Like whether you're Asian American or, like Latin, like, or like Hispanic American, as people would say, or Latinos, or if you're fill in the blank and you grew up in the States and you or your parents can relate to the immigrant experience, I think that's not unfamiliar, right? Like, but those things, the what are you and the sense of belonging. To that point, I think that I've really appreciated and embraced like being like with my family, especially my brothers, because I feel like nobody gets it like you do, like what it might have been like growing up, and then like even into present day. And I'm actually curious for you all, now that I said that, A, have you all experienced, or can you connect to that? And B, like, I think just as you see me doing this, I think a lot of what I've done in teaching and connecting with people and joining communities and in organizing family reunions and communities, in performing and getting to know people, I think a big source of like what I do now in the world is having people feel like they have a voice and a sense of belonging, because I want everybody to feel like they matter and they belong, right? So what about you guys? What do you think about that? Or have you seen that like in your own lives, or like when we were growing up with me or with other people? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the what are you question is very common. And I feel like it's less now because people know that that's like kind of weird to ask right off the bat. So yeah. People find more creative ways to ask it, or they wait longer to ask it. But I think that I always find that question interesting because like there are so many factors that go into it, like it's not just the uncertainty about like, oh, I can't really pin like where you're from or whatever. It's more like, it's like what you look like, what your name is. It's like so many things go into it. And sometimes it doesn't even have to actually do with what your background is. Mm-hmm. Like, cause like for me, my name is Khalil, and I have like pale brown skin. And so like pre-pandemic, I get into Ubers, and the Uber drivers are like, oh, Khalil,
what are you from?
Right. And so
you're like, I don't speak Arabic.
Right. Yeah. And so it's, and that has nothing to do with me being half Indian or half Puerto Rican. It's all just like what my name is and how and there's all these like
perception assumptions.
Right. And there's so many things, like, it's just so many little nuances that people can know just from meeting you, of like, oh, you were named this actually because of this, and and all that stuff. And so I find that interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah, same. I mean, I connect to those same. I mean, I think we all have those same experiences, like you said, of people wondering, feeling the need to try and place you into some box that they can understand.
Yeah.
But something that I wanted to ask you, because I know I've experienced it, is that I think maybe of the three of us, and especially in like my profession, get seen as like Indian most often, I think. Or at least if you knew I'm Indian and Puerto Rican, like no one ever sees the Puerto Rican, but generally can see the Indian, and they're like, oh, well, that I figured, but Puerto Rican I never would get. Which has just been an interesting thing to experience and feel like, because I try to feel like both things. So one, I guess the question is like, have you had that experience of like either being perceived as one versus the other, and like what has your experience been like in terms of identifying as both? Mm-hmm. And like, did you ever feel that your identity lied more in like on one side than the other, or were you always just trying to figure out how to do both, or did people put something on you?
Well, I think to that point, like what you said was so key, where you're like, people look at you and they see something, right? You look at me, I look at you, and you see something. We all have, most of us are blessed with the gift of sight to see and to perceive, right? Or even just in hearing voices and going, oh, this person, we try to, our human minds try to figure you out. I definitely feel like, I remember being very young, like in elementary school, and not really feeling like I had a box. Like I felt like in some really beautiful ways, like those boxes, like I did in my reality, they didn't exist yet. I was just kind of like, I was just like a friend. I was just a girl. I knew that I had come to identify as girl, right? I'm a girl with friends to play with, and I had a lot of hair on my arms and under here, and I knew that was kind of different.
Everyone knew that.
Everyone knew. You're right, everyone did. And then like growing up, and then middle school, and I think it was really actually in high school that I started to come to recognize people. We went to Edison High School in Edison, New Jersey, with like a public high school with like thousands of people, right? And which I really appreciate the public experience and the diverse experience, but people would be like, so starting to get those questions, I realized that people would see in me, and I've said this to you before when I've talked with my women, but they'd be like, oh, like you're feisty, or you got those good dance moves. Is that the Puerto Rican in you? And I was like, I don't know, is it? Like, did I take like measuring tape, or did I drink up more Puerto Rican today? Like, and I was like, let alone like dancing and all of these like Indian sweet 16s and like eating food. And like, obviously Edison is known as like a little India too. So I think it's actually really cool to hear what others might see, or see that, you got that good Indian long hair, you got that good Indian black hair. And I'm like, thank you. Yes, I do. And just like learning to not, I think growing up at first, when we feel insecure, it kind of feels a little weird. Like maybe you want to feel like, oh God, I'm being investigated or speculated.
Yeah, it's like the boxes are more kind of adult made things that then when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to make these boxes. But when you're little, the boxes don't necessarily come naturally.
Yeah, they didn't show up. Nobody was born and they were like, guess what? It's like we didn't, we create these labels to categorize and organize and navigate life, right? But ultimately, I do think I've learned to embrace and eventually own, like in ways like this, own the diversity of it, and own it's an expanded experience to be able to say like, yeah, like these are the things that I can identify with people who also identify as Indian. Maybe my hair, maybe my skin tone, maybe certain foods or cultures, languages, and same for Puerto Rican. Like I feel very blessed that I got to take the time to study and learn and translate Spanish, right? And live in Spain and go to Puerto Rico a lot, and hablo español casi perfectamente, right? Like I feel fluent now, so that's a key that's helped me like tap into Puerto Rican culture. And then of course, like there's our American culture that is like this melting pot. But I always ask, to your question, like I look in the mirror, and there's sometimes that when I just look in the mirror, I see me, right? I see me, but then there's moments when beyond me, I'm like, oh, I put those hoops on, or I have that curly hair, I might look a little more Puerto Rican, or I see my long hair or something different, or I put on a traditional Indian attire, and I'll be like, wow, that's a beautiful Indian princess, But the point is, whether I'm one or the other or both, like it's all me, right? So I love embracing it. What about you?
Yeah, my comment on that is that I've always found it really interesting, the proximity element of it, right? Yeah. Because we're closer to Puerto Rico than we are to India.
Location
wise. And we've been to Puerto Rico a bunch of times, and you've been to India twice. Omar and I have only been to India once.
Yeah.
So in that sense, right, you're like, in that sense, and again, this is all incorrect based on what you just said, but in that sense, the perception is then like, oh, so you're more Puerto Rican than Indian, because but then. And
the fact that people even ask, like, what are you more?
Right. But then.
When you have like one parent of each, right?
Right. But then, like you said, we grew up I grew up with mostly like Indian friends because we grew up in Edison.
Yeah.
And then and then just being a part of the whatever it is, the stereotypical makeup of what people expect. And so like I was in mostly honors classes or whatever, and that's where like a bunch of the Indian kids were. And so then that makes you feel even more like in touch with that community. And so it's this interesting thing where like, where it's like their location wise, we're closer to Puerto Rico and we're more in touch with that physically, but then within our own culture of where we live, then the opposite side then feels stronger. And so it's I always found that interesting too, where it's like, again, like you said, that's never even a valid question in the first place of like, oh, what are you feeling more, or which do you like to identify? Like that's never even a valid question because we're always just 50-50. But like but it's interesting how it ebbs and flows because of those certain elements.
What about you? What do you think? You asked the question. I'm curious. I mean, you said you feel like you get seen Indian. Are there moments where you have ever yearned for or felt like you were perceived as Puerto Rican, or maybe have trouble connecting with that side because of all the Indian people look at you and you're the darkest of the three of us. You have the features that probably look most Indian. I don't know.
Right. So so it's more like, so that in some ways you just wish, that like that part of you could be perceived by others. Maybe, I mean, just
and just looking and seeing that.
Maybe, I mean, I don't. Although it's really not so much. I mean, like in the world we move around other people, so like that's important to some extent. But but it's really because like I don't like the Puerto Rican half of me to be like left out, forgotten, or like not acknowledged. So when someone says that, I feel like often I'm quick to correct or sit just because I want to like give both sides their proper due, So that's all it is. I'm just like quick to say, well, actually, I'm only half. And not because I don't want to be fully Indian or look fully Indian. I appreciate both.
Right. Or say I'm Indian and also.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I am. And I'm also actually Puerto Rican as well. Like I'm half and half. Because I just think it's not like you're just accurately capturing who I am if you just say that or you just perceive that. And if that's what you see, that's what you see, and that's fine. But it's not about what you see ultimately, right? It is about who I am and how we grew up and our actual heritage. So for me, it's always important to just like make that distinction. And so it's also because then people realize like, oh, maybe I can't be so quick to judge in the future, right? You see someone, you're like, that person is X, or that person is Y. But you don't know, like they may look that way and they may be something completely different. And that just goes to show that like what you see is not necessarily what you're getting.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you said, the reason you have us on is because we are probably the only people in addition to you who understand that it's not just half this, half that, but it's also being from New Jersey. It's also being from Edison. It's also what is your personality type. It's also what are your parents' personalities, and it's like these so often those things are more influential and more important than what your actual racial background is.
And I think particularly for us, and another question I had was, as much as our mixed race, we're all the human race. But anyway, like also the interfaith thing, I think in some ways impacts us even more. Us, our family.
Particularly.
So I wonder if you feel that way, where like almost like the where our parents are from is one thing, but maybe like the even stronger impact that's been had on or influence on our life. Interfaith.
I think 1,000%. And at the end of the day, what does any of it all mean? Right? I feel like it's like what we do with it, right? And I think to this point, like I feel very blessed to the point of faith that I believe, and I think we've been also raised to believe that we all are born with a purpose and with our gifts and whatever our gifts look like, sound like, feel like. And I actually have come to really embrace this identity, any way you slice it, personality, right? But like I've really come to learn to look at embracing this variety of cultures and this mixed and this diversity in faith to really do something with it, right? To really use it as a platform, because I know that not everyone has that experience, and that's okay. And if you are solidly a believer in one faith or another faith, or have one race or another race, or no race or no faith, like all are welcome, all are loved, if you ask me. And I think it's really important to be able to speak to that, like, we all belong in the human race. We all matter. And like what it looks like to embrace the diversity of perspectives. And that goes straight up to the interfaith. Like, I think for us, and a big shout out to our parents that are probably on a walk somewhere tuning in or watching. We love them so much, and they really instilled in us, thanks to the Puerto Rican and Indian cultures and the cultures they chose to mix when they fell in love and they, got married and gave birth and raised us, to bring their diversity of how to give thanks to God and worship and source, universe, creator, higher power, you name it, life force, whatever you want to call it. Like, they have definitely shown us a way to embrace it and honor it. And I think that is, like, to Omar's point and what Khalil was saying too, in addition to all of the things that make up us, today has just been a perfect example. Like, we have been celebrating, really putting the Christ in Christmas, and yesterday watching Nativity Story, really honoring the Christian faith and Jesus and the birth of our Savior, right? And really honoring that. That's made us really connected to our family in Puerto Rico, as well as all other Christians around the world. And of course, all of our Muslim holidays that we really connect with, and we pray and give thanks for all of that too. So I think that is huge in being mixed. I think that's really helped me, like, really stay open-minded to what life can look like, right? And how to live it. And that brings me to my next point that I was going to ask. Because while I have you guys here, I feel like something really important to be said. Merry Christmas, Dawn. Merry Christmas, Blind. All those people watching, lots of love. Something very unique that I'm seeing as a trend. It might be because I'm the one finding and seeing, scouting out people, or people are coming to ask to speak with me on here. But either way, I'm finding that a lot of mixed race women, and perhaps mixed race folks, perhaps everyone, but as human beings, we are by nature very creative, right? Like, we create. When we speak our words, we create with our minds, with our imaginations. But I'm finding particularly a trend of many folks that have grown up with this rich mixed background that then has them gravitate towards, the arts, like painting or writing or speech, or like acting or dancing, or just something creative. And I wonder if you all have ever either thought of that, or if you find that something about your particular mixed race background fuels, what you do today. Like, because maybe I can give you a chance to, all of the guests that come on here, I always have them speak to who they are and what they're up to now. So you're welcome to do that. You want to speak to your professions or what causes you care about in life. But as I said before, is like, I find that a lot of what I love to do is really embrace and honor people's voices and stories, as I said. And I think that, like, having that really open-mindedness to different perspectives has really encouraged me and inspired me to honor everyone's stories, right? And so, especially this mixed race stories, like, just really tell people's stories fully, honestly, openly, truthfully, and really connect and get to know all types of people. Because I think we're also special and beautiful, and that's the gift that we have, that we have one another, and now we have one another on screen. So what about you? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think like artistic pursuits are kind of like inherently like a search for your identity. And so I think the fact that there are so many people who, whether they're from, underrepresented backgrounds or whatever, who go into that, I think makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times the thing you're trying to create is kind of like, in a way, is like, a piece of yourself, or trying to figure out a certain thing about yourself. And so I think it makes sense that a lot of, especially mixed people, gravitate towards that.
Do you feel like what you make is like, in a lot of ways, when you create, you write screenplays, you're up to writing novels, like, you are a writer first and foremost, and you have directing background, and you feel like a lot of what you do is bring the pieces of your childhood, your story, your upbringing to the table.
And I think everyone creatively does that, but then I think especially when you have such kind of specific things to pull from, you do. So
the unique story.
Yeah.
It might be, I think the word that Khalil used was underrepresented, and I think maybe that that might make sense, because I think what's cool about what you're doing is highlighting stories that of people that we don't always hear, right? And
Underrepresented, yeah.
So it's like mixed people, like that's not something that you see very often or read very often. So I mean, it's out there, but like certainly not like often highlighted or emphasized. So yeah, I mean, that lends itself right to like want to express and create to like show those experiences and those stories.
Yeah, that might explain why there's that urge that's like, oh, well, I want to do something like that, whereas someone else might just be like, oh, that was cool, because you're realizing that there's a void that you can fill, that, and not everyone might see that.
That in some cases, well, some might feel like their experiences have been seen and represented in media, in TV shows, in everywhere you look, validated perhaps all along in other spaces, on media, in entertainment, in politics, in school systems, somewhere else, like it feels less seen. And so I'm hearing you say also, which is beautiful, and here's where we're at, where it's like bringing those stories to light, right? And letting those stories be shown and be seen. So that's so beautiful. I love you guys so much. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that we could be chatting. Is there anything else you want to ask me, or anything you want to say to anyone who sees this now or catches the replay and sees us spending time together as a family after safe quarantine and negative COVID tests and creating this bubble? Hola, Rutita, our cousin, saying hello, hugs and kisses. Anything you want to say? Anything else on your mind?
No. Merry Christmas. keep watching these Mixed Race Women's Collective.
Yay, that's true. Thank you so much for that shout out. Keep watching these. I will continue with these Friday vibes. Let's see what I have in store for perhaps New Year's Day and beyond. This will be the last one of 2020. This started just in November, so it's just a short stint in 2020, but we're really blessed and thankful. And please make sure you keep tuning into Mixed Women Speak, Mixed Race Women Speak, specifically with this guy and this guy joining me. And join, if you're a mixed race woman or you know a mixed race woman, have her message me and look out for Mixed Race Women Collective. Join our group and join our movement, and you could be featured next to chat with me. Love you all. Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year's.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Belabo.